Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
You want to go do a podcast?
Sure.
Jump in.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbies and Kens, Kellys of all ages, and everyone else, Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
My name is Jay, and with me here I have my wonderful co-host. You have no idea how bad I wish I could be on your podcast, but, you know, John.
Yeah, my podcast name in brackets, it exists. Yeah, you're never going to be on it, Jay. No.
Definitely haven't been on it before.
No, not you haven't. Matthew
Nope.
has. Jay
Yes.
has not.
Listen. We don't have to get into the naming conventions right now.
No. Yeah, I heard it's being held in Seattle this year. I was going to
Okay.
go, but then I thought, no. I've been to enough conventions.
Don't need to go to the naming convention.
Yeah, no, BronyCon was the last one.
Well, anyway, for those of you just joining us, we are a podcast about Barbie movies. Each week, we watch one of the straight-to-DVD animated Barbie movies, and we rate its story, characters, animation, voice acting, and music to see how it stacks up. This week, we will be talking about the 21st animated Barbie movie, Barbie: A Perfect Christmas. Now, don't worry, we are skipping ahead a little bit. The 20th animated Barbie movie is actually Princess Charm School.
Okay.
But we've shuffled the episodes around a bit because we wanted this one to come out to coincide with Christmas rather than a week after Christmas. That might be a little odd. But we will circle back to cover Princess Charm School very soon.
I know. OCD. It's crazy.
You know, we will. Don't worry about that. We will get to that episode. I know it's a popular one, so just wanted to warn everyone.
I can't
But
wait
yeah.
for that one, actually.
Yeah, I've heard things about that movie. We have some good guests lined up as well.
Oh, we have guests?
Yes, we do.
Cool.
They've both been on the podcast before.
Yeah, but that'll be next year.
Yes, with that episode will be coming out next year. We do have a bit of a holiday break planned where we'll be taking a break from Barbie movies for just a few weeks to do a few more of our sort of other mini-series, Glimpsing Greta. More info about that on the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Barbie: A Perfect Christmas. This was released on November 11th, 2011 on DVD. Now, the reason you might say it's a Christmas movie, why is it released in November? Well, they often do that to, get it out there before Christmas time. Because people
So you
don't
can buy
generally...
it on Black Friday.
Yeah. Well, and people don't generally watch Christmas movies after Christmas. So if you release it, the later you release it, the fewer people pick it up. It's usually has to do with theatrical releases.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Here it is. They're releasing this DVD a little bit early, maybe also to give parents time to pick it up for a Christmas present for their kids, along with
Good
the
luck.
coinciding dolls.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's directed by Mark Baldo. This is his first and only Barbie movie, but he had previously worked on projects for Lego, some animated stuff for them, including Atlantis, Hero Factory, and you're going to like this one, Bionicle, The Legend Reborn.
I watched all of those things from him, including Lego Atlantis. I actually enjoyed those.
Okay.
Bionicle Legend Reborn is a different story because there's a lot of things behind the scenes. But we won't get into that.
Yeah, we may have to do our Bionicle movie podcast later. But yeah, anyway, he's new to the series, and we actually have a new production company here coming in and doing the animation. This is the first of two Barbie movies produced by Technicolor SA. They have a different name now, but I didn't write that down. And interestingly, they did produce two movies back to back. The next movie they did is, I think, a few years later. Um,
Um,
oh, go ahead.
is Rainmaker still involved?
I don't know because there isn't a ton of details about the production here, but they are using a lot of similar models in similar locations, so I have to imagine that there's some crossover.
Yeah, because I've noticed in the past few films they've been calling it Barbie Productions instead of
Okay.
Rainmaker. So I wonder if they changed the name or if they just made their own and just kept the assets.
Yeah, and it is possible that it's like a division that moves within larger companies. Like it could be possible that Barbie Productions owns the different assets and then they can bring them over to a different company to do the animation work.
Yeah.
But yeah, but behind the scenes we have a lot of the same um people working on this. It's written by Elise Allen,
Mm.
who's written most of the last few Barbie movies. And we actually do have new composers, though. We have Gabriel Mann and Rebecca Newbold. Not
Bull.
entirely sure how to. Newbold, yeah. Um, they are composers known for their work on TV. They've done some work together and some work separately. Um, and this is the first of actually a few Barbie movies that they have worked on.
Mm.
So we'll
Okay.
be hearing them again. And we also have original songs with lyrics by Amy Powers. Once again, coming back, she does a lot of the original lyrics. And then we also have Gabriel Mann, who again was one of the composers, and Rob Hudnut, who has also done lyrics for previous movies, and he's one of the producers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's some familiar faces, some new faces here. And I think you can tell that the animation is being done by a new studio.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
even
There's
though,
the designs are slightly different for sure. The lighting is not perfect.
even though it is a perfect Christmas.
It. Yeah. Even though.
Yeah, but to dive into the story first, this is about Barbie and her sisters. This is the first time we've seen more than one sister at a time in a Barbie movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, these sisters are Skipper, Stacy, and Chelsea. What happened to Kelly? Who
She's dead.
knows? Yeah,
Here's a theory.
that's
Here's a theory. Callie isn't actually Barbie's sister, but only an actress played to play her sister in those films.
oh, that actually makes more sense than my
Yeah.
theory, which was what you mentioned that she's passed away.
Yeah, because Hannah Montana, the show, the character is Miley, but her brothers aren't actually those characters. Her father is, but not the other characters.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, anyway, we have these three sisters and Barbie, and they're going to go to New York for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Skipper is going to be performing a song she wrote for a band, or the band's going to be performing the song. Anyway, she wrote this song, and they're super excited to go and see the performance. And their Aunt Millie from Paris, from Fashion Fairy Tale, is planning on meeting them there. But on their way, the plane gets grounded in Minnesota due to a winter storm, and the girls end up at the Tannenbaum Inn and meet its proprietor, Christy Clausen, who is definitely not related to Santa Claus at all.
I mean, I believe she's not.
Her last name is Clausen,
I know, I
and
know,
then they're
but
they're family
I
friends.
I think that they just know the tongue in cheek of it, and they like to play with it.
Okay.
So they're not going to deny that they're not, but they're just going to build up the the mystery so that the children could be, oh my gosh. That's what I think they're doing.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
it
it's
is
better that
odd.
way.
Yeah,
It's better that way than just having them being related to Santa.
but I don't know. We'll have to get into it later. But I do feel like the ending kind of confirms it, and the fact
Tongue in
that
cheek.
Chelsea is constantly like, yeah, it could be just like a coincidence, but yeah. Anyway, they're at this Tannenbaum Inn, and they're kind of disappointed, but eventually they kind of start to have fun doing various winter activities. Do we see these various winter activities? Why, yes, we do. We spent about, what, 20 minutes on it?
We spent the entire film on it, actually.
Yeah, pretty much. And while they're doing these winter activities, Skipper meets a garage band playing in a gas station in the middle of what is presumably a field surrounded by trees.
Luckily, she does. Who
And
happened to have listened to her podcast.
yes, oh yes, we should mention she is a podcaster. That's why
Mm,
the opening line I chose was about being on a podcast.
yeah.
Um, hers is a video podcast, but so some kinship with her there.
More of a vlog, but yeah.
Yeah, though it is also live, so it's more of a live stream.
Yeah, it's all three of these things. She was coming up with a new genre. At this time, podcasts were relatively new, weren't they?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure when the first podcast started coming out, but it was around this time that it was sort of an emerging genre.
Yeah, a variant of radio talk shows.
Yeah. So to have her own podcast is very cutting edge at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, the band who initially can't be on her podcast for some reason, but then they can because they're going to perform with her for this big winter show that she's putting on since she can't make it to New York. But while they're sort of setting up for this performance, a rogue squirrel distracts the dogs and ends up destroying the setup in a scene that is almost ripped out of the Ice Age movies.
Yeah, no, the squirrel is just there to fill time and to get
Yep.
some action scenes with dogs.
Yes, and in all of this chaos, turns out Chelsea, the youngest sister, who has been feeling left out, she runs away to a barn where the girls all reconcile and then discover that someone, Christy Clausen's uncle, who may or may not be Santa Claus, has taken all of the presents out of this barn that were there and set up a stage. And Aunt Millie shows up and they perform, and everyone gets their happy ending.
Yeah. This is a Lifetime movie. It's a Hallmark movie without any of the romance.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's exactly what this is. It's your typical basic Christmas movie.
Yeah. The story is about as by the numbers as it could be.
It's not terrible, but it's super basic.
Yeah. And I do like that it's a bit more character focused.
Mm.
Um but a good character focused story needs good characters, and I don't think this movie has bad characters, but they're not quite
They're
interesting enough.
they're basic,
Yeah.
but they're also just copies of better characters. Really,
Yeah.
nothing we haven't seen before. That's the best way to describe these characters.
Yeah. And I mean, each of the sisters gets a bit of an arc, but
Yeah.
they're the arcs you kind of expect them to have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the first things I wanted to point out with the story is that, as far as I can tell, there are no direct flights to from Los Angeles to New York that go anywhere near Minnesota.
In real life, or
in real life.
well, you see, that was back in 2011, so maybe
Yeah,
regulations have changed.
it was this geography thing of like when I heard it, I'm like, why are they over Minnesota? That I looked it up and all of the flight paths that I could see. Now, I don't know how accurate Google is in terms of depictions of flight paths, but it didn't look like there was any possible way that they would end up in Minnesota.
Maybe it was the only airport that would accept them mid-flight.
Yeah,
Where would they be around that region, though? Closest to Minnesota.
the closest point to Minnesota, it looked like would be Iowa, which is the state just south of Minnesota.
Okay,
They would be like southern Iowa.
so they'd have to like turn left, essentially,
Yeah,
and go up.
turn left to go up for a bit. It was
Yes.
just an odd thing. And I know why they're going to Minnesota because it's like, it's a place where it actually snows.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it just kind of set this sort of odd standard for the rest of the movie because there's not a ton of plot going on. So I'm just like, the entire movie, why are they in Minnesota?
Where are the Minnesota accents?
I mean, Christy kind of has a little bit. I think though it's more the Canadian voice actors just aren't trying to do American accents.
I mean, they can actually do Minnesota accents. I've heard them do it before. I
Okay.
just don't know why they're not doing it.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Minnesota, that's where this Tannenbaum Inn is. And I mean, you have your theory that it doesn't have anything to do with Santa, but for me, it was like as soon as they walked in, I'm like, oh, yep, that's Santa's gonna have something to do with this.
I wanted nothing to do with Santa. That's why I say so.
And
I mean,
Chelsea,
it is a world with fairies and flairies, so Santa's not far off. But I still think their characters are so much better if they're not related to Santa, but are just you know being tongue in cheek about it.
yeah, that's I think a fair assessment. For me, it was just kind of like if you're gonna go the Santa Claus route, actually do it. Don't have it as like this surprise because it isn't a surprise.
Santa doesn't even show up. We
No,
think. I mean, he could.
yeah, uh, I mean that might have been a more interesting direction to take things, but also it would have distracted. I think the fact that they were trying to pass it off as a mystery, even though like even Chelsea figured out that it was Santa Claus.
I
Yeah.
saw it as less of a mystery and more so a child wanting it to be something.
Okay. I like your read of the film. I don't know if the
It
film
is a much
supports
better
that
read
read.
than probably what it actually is,
Yeah.
which is why the story is better for me. I think.
Yeah. As we mentioned above, a lot of time is spent on just the like winter activities. Specifically, there's like a segment in the middle of the movie that's just like
Slaying,
sleighs and then
a dog
skating and
chase.
then snow angels and a snowball fight. It's like, oh, this could have been like a 5 minute montage and we would have gotten the same experience out of it.
They don't even play a song during that segment.
No. Well, because it's like a solid 20 minutes long.
There should have been a song in there of them
Yeah.
enjoying their time, but no.
Yeah, we'll have to get into the music. The music here is strange.
I actually don't hate it, but we'll get to that.
Okay. And yeah, it's interesting because the last few movies we've had, sort of the most interesting part be the Ken subplot,
There's no Ken.
and there's no Ken here. Yeah.
What's Ken doing for Christmas? I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, you could have had something of him and Aunt Millie, who are already in New York, trying to get to Minnesota, but that would
Maybe.
probably be too much like Fashion Fairy Tale. Or just like have him be along for the ride and then he gets like caught up in something. I
Or
think
have
it
him in
almost
the
like,
opening
yeah.
saying bye to Barbie. There's no
Gi-
Ken. There's no mention of Ken.
yeah, give him something to do. Give
He's
him like Todd and BoJack Horseman, who just kind of gets random tasks where he goes off and has a B plot.
oh my gosh. Imagine that. You have Barbie on this Christmas adventure, then you have our Todd Ken going off and joining a cult in the middle of the ocean.
Oh, I was thinking more like when he tries to get the ice at the hotel, and he just kind of wanders and gets lost inside the hotel for an episode.
But doesn't he also get wrapped up with the cartel in that episode?
I don't remember. I
Like
don't
he
think
he
so.
tries to get ice, and then he gets kidnapped by a cartel member.
Maybe that's. I don't know. I was just rewatching this
On it,
episode.
honestly, who knows? Todd has so many adventures.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening to Binging Barbie, a BoJack Horseman podcast.
Two very similar things. Back to
Yes.
Ken though.
Yeah, he's just. I felt his absence here because he's been the most fun part of the last two movies. That,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously we haven't seen Princess Charm School yet, so I'm not sure how much he factors in there. But yeah, I was missing his goofy, dorky presence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I gave the story a 2 out of 5. I think maybe I'm rating it a bit too lowly, but I just never felt invested,
Mm.
except for one moment, which we'll talk about with the characters.
Yeah. I gave mine a 2.8. It's below the good average, but it's not great, but it's not terrible. There is a slight structure. Slight. But again, it's a very blandly basic story that you'll find in every Hallmark / Lifetime Christmas film. Everything's
Yeah,
predictable. It's safe, and it is what it is.
yeah. So next up, we have the characters who, I don't know, for me, the relationship between the characters are sometimes interesting, but the characters themselves kind of fall flat.
A bit, yeah.
So first up is Barbie, who she actually has the least to do of any of the sisters here. She has the least arc.
She's the most forgettable in this film.
Yeah, I do like this detail where she feels responsible for her sisters and has to be sort of the adult who's looking out for them.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't really her responsibility, a lot of the things she's worrying about. Um, but yeah, that plot line doesn't really go anywhere. But what I like about it is the scene she has between her and Christy at the first night they're at this inn.
When she's trying to make a wish.
Yeah. And it's sort of this moment where Barbie sort of lets down the mask, so to speak, and kind of reveals a little bit of vulnerability about how she feels sort of like she has to fill this role of the perfect big sister who looks out for her little sisters, and she's happy to play that role, but she's worried about her ability to see it through. And it got me thinking because the last few movies especially, Barbie has been sort of this steadfast character who, like, the people around her are the people who have arcs and who need to grow in self-confidence, but Barbie's just kind of there as like a friend and a confidant to them. So it's kind of interesting to have this movie bring up the idea of like, oh, what how does Barbie feel about that? But again, that's a single scene that doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, no, she's just in the background most of the time. Her sisters get all the screen time.
Yep. Now, her oldest sister is Skipper. She is a podcaster, or as I wrote in my notes, she is a podcast. I got
Vlogger,
distracted.
live stream,
Yep.
mer.
She's kind of, her conflict is sort of the overarching conflict of the movie,
It is.
where, well, because they're going to New York to see the concert thing, and then the sort of the catharsis of the movie is her getting to put on a concert in Minnesota. So she kind of bookends the story of the movie.
I suppose. Yeah.
But even still, she doesn't have a lot of like focus.
Yeah, no, it's focused on a different set. But yeah, no. Like you said in your notes, her story arc is very obvious. We know how it's
Yep.
going to end.
You know how it's going to end before it begins.
Right.
You know she's not going to make it to New York, and she'll put on a concert in wherever she ends up, and it'll go well.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens.
It'll be even more meaningful than the original.
Yeah.
I guess she's also a songwriter too.
Yeah. What I do find interesting about her is her relationship with Barbie,
Mm.
where it feels like this sort of classic sibling dynamic where Barbie is sort of the quote unquote perfect model kid who does everything right and knows how to do everything. And then Skipper is kind of like following in her footsteps and trying to find her own lane. And, Barbie's just tried to look out for her, but sometimes it feels like Barbie is sort of smothering her and not allowing her to grow for herself. Um, and it is also this interesting commentary on the Barbie archetype as a sort of unachievable goal of, Barbie is always kind, clever, and brave, and she rarely has any sort of growth to go through. Whereas Skipper is, she's a little more insecure. She isn't perfect. And so I find that relationship between her and Barbie interesting, but that's not what the movie's about. And the movie barely has those ideas here.
I wonder, did Barbie just leave behind her sisters in the last two films?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, where are the parents? What are they doing? When Barbie went to France by herself, were the sisters left with Skipper?
Yeah, I almost wonder. I mean, I assume the parents are still in the picture, and it must just be that Barbie is sort of like independent enough that she can both fly off to Paris without telling anyone, and then also that she can watch after her sisters while they go to New York for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there isn't like a sense of like the specifics of how their family functions. Like who's the legal guardian here?
We don't know.
Yeah, and these aren't necessarily important questions for this movie in particular, but it is like thinking about these Barbie movies as sort of they're starting to get a little bit more interconnected.
which brings up these questions, and it doesn't feel connected
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah. And yeah, I just wish that this movie had dug into this relationship between Barbie and Skipper because I think it makes both characters more interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like a throwaway moment in the film because all of the attention of this film is between Stacy and Chelsea.
Yeah. And they also have a classic sibling dynamic. Stacy is the older of the two, and Chelsea kind of copies what Stacy is doing because Chelsea isn't really quite sure how to participate in her own way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Stacy is actually quite mean to Chelsea, but in sort of this accurate way. I have two younger siblings who that's definitely the dynamic they had, especially when they were kids.
This is the
Um,
dynamic I had with my own sister. So yeah, it's very accurate.
yeah,
We are pretty mean
yep. But yeah, I don't think it makes for a particularly compelling narrative.
because we know what the resolution will be by the end.
Yeah, it's not. Again, like I said, I find the Barbie and the Skipper relationship to be interesting because it reveals more about both of those characters. Whereas for Stacy and Chelsea, that's kind of all we know about these two characters. There isn't a ton of depth to be revealed about either of them. They're just kind of the
Chelsea just wants to be involved, and so she's looking up to her older sister, but still young enough, Stacy.
yeah,
Uh, well, Stacy's just wanting to be on her own. She doesn't want to be fully connected. She's reaching that maturity of being a teenager, although I don't know how old she is. And around that point, they want to be by themselves. And so, yeah, I get it. She's being held back by the little kid who just
yeah,
wants the attention and just wants to not be alone.
yeah. And I do think, I mean, this is probably the relationship that is most relevant to the target demographic.
Yeah, yeah, which is why I think they put it up front for most of the film
Yeah. Again, for me as an adult viewer, I don't find it the most interesting though.
because we've matured past this pettiness between siblings.
Yeah.
At least we think we did.
Or at least we're aware enough to understand what's going on. Whereas, Chelsea doesn't quite understand, which is why she runs away because she has a lot of emotions and she doesn't quite know how to what to do with them.
Yeah,
But yeah, I of the character dynamics, I really think the Barbie and the Skipper dynamic has more, especially since this is a Barbie movie. It's not a Stacy or Chelsea movie.
yeah, yeah. That's where all the time and the quote unquote story that we have is just on them, really.
Yeah. Yeah, next up for characters we have Christy Clausen.
Uh huh.
Again, I
She's
oh go ahead.
she's really the chipper character of the group.
Yeah. Very optimistic, very sort
Mm-hmm.
of I like the scene between her and Barbie, and I kind of wish there had been a bit more there. Like have these two characters interact in more than just that one scene.
I like how helpful she is.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, really? Let me help you with this.
Yeah. And that's kind of the sort of there's almost a magic to her, which kind of fits with the Santa Claus vibes. Like she almost feels like a supernatural entity within the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could even dig in deeper and be like, oh, the inn showed up right when they needed it and right where they needed it to. And then all of the sort of elements to create this perfect Christmas come together magically. And this is why I don't think you need to see Santa Claus himself, because you have Christy here who's doing a lot of the traditional like Santa Claus stuff of solving all of the problems and being the sort of jovial force within the story. But yeah, she doesn't really have much of a character beyond the surface.
Is this the first Barbie film without an antagonist?
Well, I put the squirrel down as the closest thing the movie has to a villain, but yeah, I think because even Thumbelina, where the antagonist is sort of not revealed until later, has a villain.
But he was a clear villain
Yeah.
by the end. Here, there really isn't. The squirrel is just there,
Yep.
eating nuts, and driving the dogs crazy. Yeah, no, there's not been an antagonist for this one. There's no villain.
Yeah. And that kind of fits in with the sort of the way the movie is about the characters and the relationships, not sort of direct plot elements.
Mm-hmm.
Which again I find interesting, but the way it plays out is not as interesting as we're making it sound right now.
Yeah, I don't know what else they could have done to have villainy in here.
Yeah, I honestly don't think you need a villain here.
No, but there's not a big conflict in this film besides, oh no, we can't go to New York. And also, my sister's mean to me.
Yeah. And I almost wish they had again gone more into Barbie's conflict of sort of the weight of her responsibility versus her need to do what is correct.
I think this type of story works for maybe 30 minutes to 40 and not
Okay.
the full hour 10 that we got.
Yeah, which might be why they added all of the winter activities in the middle of it.
Yeah, yeah, that is really filler. Especially the dog chasing the squirrels. That's the most filler in this
Yeah.
film.
Yeah, because it just serves to set the plot back a little bit. It doesn't.
Doesn't actually do anything. Sure, the first interaction leads them to. Does it lead them to the deer?
Not really, no. Or maybe? I don't know. I
Eh,
wasn't paying close enough attention to that part.
and we get to the barn one way or another.
Yep.
It did not need to be a 10-minute action sequence, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I gave the characters a 3.5 out of 5. I think specifically for the Barbie and Skipper relationship. And part of the reason I rate the story so low and the characters a bit higher is because I wish the story had actually given time for that relationship to take more of a foreground here.
Yeah, I gave the characters a 3. They're fine. They're somewhat rounded, well rounded, but yeah, they're again they're the basic stereotype characters that we have with very clear arcs, very obvious endings.
Yeah. Now, next up, we have the animation,
Animation.
which is maybe in some ways a slight improvement over Fairy Secret.
Slight. I do think it's slight. I think the models themselves are slightly better, but the art design is not. The character designs are not better.
Yeah. I think where it looks best is in the backgrounds once they get to Minnesota.
I thought that it looked the best when they were in the car driving in the winter, because
Yes.
that's where you have the best lighting, and I feel like they had actual texture, skin texture, slight, that was visibly there. That's not in the rest of the film.
Yeah.
It could be a lighting thing. So the the models can look good under lighting, but lighting is only in very specific moments.
Yeah. I will say the winter aesthetic and the Christmas aesthetic, I think, work here.
Yeah,
Pretty much everything else is a bit of a letdown.
the dogs are fine except for the husky because they exaggerate him.
Yeah. The locations, except for Barbie's house, though Barbie's house doesn't look bad from an animation perspective, but I just don't like her hot pink Christmas tree.
No, the inn when they first arrived looked nice with all the lights and the trees.
Yeah. And at night, like the scene of Barbie sort of walking out of her room at night and then singing the song, I think that does look good. But then, yeah, from that point on, when it's in the daylight, it's just kind of flat and not great. And then these are the worst character models of movement we've seen since Barbie Diaries.
Um,
Specifically, the eyes.
okay, maybe the guys.
Because everyone's eyes are way too wide and not expressive enough.
Yeah, no, the expression. I think the most expressive character in this film was Christy.
Yes, and not in a good way. She, in particular, looks like she's being controlled by some, like, force and only actually has control of her eyes while this other force is moving her body around.
Yeah, I think her face looks better than everyone else because they actually express smaller details in the muscles,
Yeah. But
especially the eyebrow muscles.
her facial expressions never match. Like her eyes never match what the rest of her face is doing, and then her face never matches exactly what her body's doing.
Yeah, I think the only eyes that really match belongs to. Let's take a look. Stacy.
Okay. I was mainly noticing how everyone else's eyes are just so off.
Yeah, because when Stacy glares, that's a good look,
Yeah.
but it's a really quick moment that you can easily miss.
Yeah. And I think part of it might just be like growing pains of we have this new studio that's doing this, but it's never been an issue in any of the other movies except for maybe Barbie Diaries.
Yeah,
So yeah, I question why they went to this other animation studio for this movie because it ends up not quite working out.
I don't know. Trying new things.
Yeah,
It was
that's
probably
fair.
cheaper. It was probably a cheaper decision.
That might be it because this is 2011. There were 3 Barbie movies.
Okay.
And that has been true for other years, though. Yeah, the animation budget in this year really suffered, at least for Fairy Secret and Perfect Christmas. We obviously haven't seen Princess Charm School yet, but hopefully that one's better.
Hopefully that's where the budget went to.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely not here.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but even the action scenes look pretty bland.
Yeah, it could also just be the way it's quote unquote filmed and edited together.
Yeah. There's some cool flourishes, but on a moment to moment basis, it kind of they're
It's
always
slow.
going for the yes, it's slow and they're always going for the expected angles.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a ton of innovation or creativity. It's just kind of okay, let's knock these things out. Let's get this scene done. Yeah, that hasn't necessarily always been true. Even of Barbie Diaries. Barbie Diaries had some interesting camera work and editing.
Yeah. They tried something different. Whether or not they succeeded is a different story.
Yeah. So yeah, I gave the animation a 2 out of 5.
I give it a 2.5. I don't think it's as terrible as you do, but it's not great. It's not a standard level that it should be.
Yeah. I think even though I said that it's an improvement over Fairy Secret, I think I did end up rating it lower than Fairy Secret.
But Fairy Secret had a better action sequence.
Yeah, Fairy Secret had more interesting stuff going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, next up we have voice acting, which I don't have a ton to say on this. Usually I like to take notes on who's done what and what else people have been in. But here, I don't know, there were just a lot of annoying kid voices.
Because they were kids, for sure.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, how many of the performers were actual kids.
Yeah, here's two things to point out. We have Ashlyn Drummond and Aiden Drummond. Ashlyn played Chelsea. Aiden played Brian, whoever that is. He's probably the band guy. They are both siblings, and they are both the children of Brian Drummond, who had voiced some
Oh,
characters in previous Barbie films.
that's neat.
hmm And then that's really the only thing familiar. Of course, we have Shahrazani,
Yep.
but everyone else, I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, and we do have Alistair Abel. He's been in a few of these. I believe Patricia Drake has played Aunt Millie in the other movies.
I don't know.
Maybe not. I have seen her name before.
Maybe.
Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna say anything about the kids' performances because I think it's kind of
I think
mean
they were
to.
fine. They did what they did. They were
Yeah.
kids, so they can't go as best as they can.
Yep.
There's a couple good line readings from them, but yeah, they are what they are.
Yeah. I think the bigger thing for me is that the musical performances, which is not
Oh,
technically voice acting, but
oh
they're
yeah.
they're rough.
They're rough. They also don't match. I feel like they don't match the characters. The voices don't
Yeah.
match.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because we'll talk about the music later, but
Yeah.
I put that
Uh
in my voice acting category just
yeah.
because.
Diana Karina is again Barbie. And this is my least favorite performance of hers.
Yeah, which she also doesn't have a ton to work with here, but
She sounds so much younger and just doesn't sound anything like Barbie. She doesn't really try, which is fine. You know, she's probably finding her own thing. But
Yeah.
nothing here led me to believe that she could sound like Barbie.
Yeah. I gave the voice acting a 2.5 out of 5. That's maybe a bit harsh, but
But you don't like kid voices.
yeah.
Yeah, I give it a 3. I'm more tolerant of kid voices because they're kids. They're not as experienced, and I thought the kids did all right.
Yeah, I
I
think that's fair.
Yeah, I spend more time with kid voices, cartoons, and all that.
Yeah, I don't particularly like trying to evaluate kids' performances and stuff because it always feels a bit like they're kids and they're doing an adult job, and that's not something that should be like critiqued.
Right.
But I do think just overall the voice acting was not impressive across the board.
Or as strong as we have seen in
Yeah,
previous entries.
yeah,
It's
that's a
still
good way.
it's still acceptable, but it's not as great as it could be.
Yeah. Now, speaking of maybe acceptable but not as good as it could be, the music,
I preferred it more than you, it seems.
yeah, for me, none of these songs sounded like Christmas songs.
I agree.
Like, you have the opportunity with Barbie A Perfect Christmas. That is the perfect opportunity to be like, let's take all of the conventions of Christmas songs, let's have the bells, let's have the melodies, let's have all of these things and just like make some songs out of that.
Right, the only Christmas song was the last one where they sang Deck the Halls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even then, they're singing like a not particularly Christmassy version of it.
They're singing more like pop
Yeah.
songs. The only one that's not is the very first song where they they actually use the song in the way that I like it, where they talk about their motivations for this film and what they're hoping to
Yes.
do, which is good. But I think that the songs are good, but the vocal
Oh,
performances are not.
okay.
I
You
think if
see,
like so, if someone actually were to do covers of these songs, it'd be so much better.
yeah, I wasn't able to separate it while listening to it enough to make that distinction. So, yeah, I can't really disagree with you on that. I just found the songs to be, every time they were about to sing, it was like, oh no, not again.
Right? It's like okay, let's see how good they are this time.
And the other thing is, I don't think it's because the singers are bad singers. I think the songs are difficult to sing to
Right.
because they're going for this sort of more poppy vibe as opposed to Christmassy songs, which tend to, you know, Christmas carols are very generous and you can sing them even if you don't have a lot of musical talent and they'll still probably sound good.
Yeah.
But here,
Barbie's singing sounds nothing like Barbie,
yeah,
and the voices, like we said before, the singing voices don't seem to match the characters.
yeah.
Even when their lips are moving, I'm like, well, that's not her voice. That one should belong to the other character.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
It
And yeah,
really is.
I don't know. When you say Christmas musical, I want a few Christmas songs.
Yeah, these are these are something.
Yeah. You could take these songs, change the lyrics slightly, and fit them into Fairy Secret. and they would probably fit the style better.
They probably make that film better, to be honest.
Yeah. Whereas here it's like, just give me some Christmas songs. So I'm like, doesn't even need to be pre-existing Christmas songs. Write your own songs that sound like Christmas songs.
I mean, they tried with the song "A Perfect Christmas," but still,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I said, I think the songs themselves are good frameworks, but they just don't have a good body after the frame.
Yeah. And the score itself is just kind of forgettable.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. I gave it a 2 out of 5 overall. I will say the one song I did like is when Barbie sings the song about wishing on a star.
Right. I give it a 3. Like again, if these songs were performed better, I think I'd actually bop to them and just listen
Okay.
to the soundtrack. But it's not. I don't think it's 100% terrible. It's it is what it is.
Yeah.
I actually like the way these sound versus in previous films where like they're background music to me.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to listen to some of them again.
Yeah,
But
I think the first song I like the most, even though the kids don't actually sing it; they're just yelling the
yeah.
lyrics.
But yeah, that leaves my overall score at 12 out of 25, which is a 48% or a 2.4. So just about half marks for this movie.
Mm. Yeah, mine is a 14.3, which is 57% or a 2.8 5-star rating. It is the third lowest film, just below Fairy Secret and just above Thumbelina.
Yeah, and I did, well, while we're looking at that, I did, this is our 20th episode. Can't
Yeah,
believe we made it here. And so I did want to take a sec to just kind of look back and see what are some of our favorites so far and some of our least favorites.
yeah,
So this is our overall scores. We'll start with those. These are based on our numerical rankings, including guest rankings. And you can find all of these full lists on our letterbox profile as well. But currently, our rankings for the top 3 are Princess and the Pauper at number 1, Magic of Pegasus at number 2, and A Christmas Carol, kind of a surprise number 3 there.
but
And
that's
then,
also tied with Rapunzel.
yep, tied with Rapunzel. Christmas Carol, we have like a tiebreaker thing that Christmas Carol apparently went out on. But yeah, so those are kind of, I guess, our top 4 there,
Yeah, score wise,
score wise. Yes. Do you want to give your top few and then I'll give mine
my top few personally or score wise?
personally?
Yeah, personally, my top 3. Number 1 being Princess and the Pauper. I don't think that's been matched by anything else. I still really like that film. Then would be Mariposa. I enjoyed that, even though it's in the middle of my score. And then third would be Magic of Pegasus or Rapunzel.
Okay.
Between those two.
Yeah, that means we have similar top ones. Mine are actually the score and my personal rankings are very similar here, where I have Princess at the Pauper again, also at the top. That I actually put Magic of Pegasus, which, depending on what day you ask me, I might actually rank that higher than Princess and the Pauper. And then Mariposa, which, yeah, we talked about that on that episode. I really dug that one.
Mm-hmm. And then you talked about our least favorites here.
Yeah, let me go through the rankings where score wise we actually all have the same bottom 3 of A Perfect Christmas, Thumbelina, and Barbie Diaries at the very bottom, though we have them in different orders, I believe.
Yeah. or
Yeah.
no?
I have Thumbelina at the very bottom,
Okay,
which, I said on that episode I might regret that decision later, but I don't think I do
give
because
it give it a few more weeks.
I think Barb. Well, yeah, I think it probably won't stay at the bottom, but Barbie Diaries and Perfect Christmas are more interesting movies to me than Thumbelina. Specifically, Barbie Diaries. I think that's one I may
Yeah,
have to revisit.
I actually I actually think fondly of Barbie Diaries, even though it is a mess of a film.
Yeah, I think I was too harsh on it in our review.
No, no, no. Our review is accurate. Like score wise, it is very accurate, but it is enjoyable.
Yeah, it had its moments, which I don't think Thumbelina has many moments that shone brightly.
Yeah. What's our personal bottom three?
I mean, mine are probably the same of maybe Barbie Diaries, followed by Perfect Christmas, and then Thumbelina at the very bottom.
Yeah. For me though, mine would be Fairytopia, Perfect Christmas, and here's the one that I said that you would be surprised by: Diamond Castle.
Oh, I am surprised by that one.
Hmm.
Has not aged well in your thoughts about it.
Yeah, I can't deny that just score wise, it's a better film, but I just personally don't like it.
Okay.
I prefer Thumbelina, even though I don't. There's a lot of problems with it. I just prefer it.
Yeah, this is interesting. Diamond Castle is usually thought of as one of the best, which I ranked it pretty low on my scores as well, considering it was the one that I was really looking forward to when we started this podcast. But yeah,
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 there.
those are some of our rankings so far. Of course, check out our letterboxd for the full list. And while you're there, you should give us a follow. We are Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast on Letterboxd. Instagram, which is Binging Barbie Podcast, and our Twitter is at Binging Barbie. And we also have a Tumblr, we have a Facebook. So follow us anywhere you can. And yeah, as we said at the start of the episode, it's the holidays, so we're taking a little bit of a break from Barbie. We'll be doing 2 episodes of the sort of ongoing mini series Glimpsing Greta, where next week we'll be talking Frances Ha, and then the week after that we'll be talking the new release White Noise. Both of those are directed by Greta Gerwig's partner Noah Baumbach and starring Greta Gerwig herself. And then, yeah, our Barbie episodes will start back up in the new year. So make sure to subscribe and follow us so that you can listen to our episode on Princess Charm School.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, you guys. Please enjoy
Yeah.
these holidays and have a happy New Year.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Goodbye.
Bye. Kwanzaa.